All right, welcome in. It is episode 93 of the Three Guys Talking Ball podcast. It is also the pre-college football episode. We'll break down all of our conference winners, our playoff national champion here, going over some week 1 games, previewing some of our local teams here of our favorite Big Ten. And since it is the college football preview, we have to bring on the big guns here. He is he's tied again for the most guest appearances here on the podcast. He's tied Zach Willis from last week's episode where we did our NDSU preview. But now the FBS season is here. NDSU actually is going to be playing in the cities on Saturday at US Bank Stadium against Eastern Washington. But we bring on Nate Rohr. Nate, the last time we talked to you was after the hiring of Matt Rule as the head coach in Nebraska. Now, your team, the Huskers, Ethan's team, the Gophers, are colliding, I guess you could say tonight, since even though we're recording this Wednesday, this is coming out on Thursday. So they are separated. They were jawing a little bit back and forth in the pre-show, but excited to have college football back, and you got Gus and Joel on the call. But Nate, how was the summer? I know you were back doing PA back in Omaha, or in that Omaha area for I can't remember the exact league they are in, but Ethan has worked for the Wilmer Stingers as an intern, and then this is how you and I met. I was doing color for the Big Sticks. You were doing it for the Fremont Moo. Do you have any from this year or previous years of stories of summer baseball you could share?
Well, the bus trips up to the Dakotas were very interesting for us.
Very scenic.
Yeah, a little scenic. I remember, I think it was July 4th, my first year, so 2020, Moo had come up to Dickinson to play the Big Sticks, and I think they'd lost the first 2 games, and then they win on the 4th of July, and that ended the series, right? So the Moo started home, and our bus broke down just out of Dickinson. And so there we are sitting there, 4th of July, no air conditioning. Fortunately, it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, so it's not the heat of the day, but it's still not comfortable. There was another time, these long bus trips, you're usually getting sleep, and most of the guys in back are getting sleep, and so you're kind of in and out of consciousness. I forget where we were going. It might have been Dickinson, but we were going, it might have been Minot, but one of the North Dakota teams, we're on our way to play in North Dakota. And so we're busing through South Dakota, and there was a construction site. One of the highways was under construction. You can't get anywhere, west of just that I-29 corridor on an interstate. So we're going north on a state highway. It's under construction, and we're driving on a dirt road with a charter bus. And I wake up to this, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be outside pushing here before too long. So those are my 2 travel stories. But yeah, this year I've been staying a little closer to home. I've been PAing with the Omaha Storm Chasers, the Royals AAA affiliate.
Oh, very cool.
So that's been fun. That's been nice. They play out in suburban Papillion. But yeah, keeping me busy, keeping the pipes working during the summer as school sports fire up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about going on a dirt road or dealing with construction in North Dakota. There is a saying that North Dakota has 2 seasons, winter and road construction. Yeah. And it is very true.
Well, the first one for you guys lasts about 9 months, so that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And it's right now it's getting 90. It's been in the 90s lately. Been dealing with some smoke from the forest fires, but
Sure.
I'm more of a I'll take the heat because I've had jobs where I've had to work out in the cold
Oof.
in the winter, and it's not fun. Give me the
Yeah.
heat all day. I'll sweat. I can take a shower. It's a lot harder to warm up for me. But
Yeah. I heard that.
like I said, the last time we had you on, you talking the Matt Rule hire, and now I don't know if you've but I don't know if this has been you, Nate, but there's definitely some Nebraska fans that I have talked to up here is they've drank the Kool-Aid. They are convinced that Nebraska is going 12-0. They are going to go run the Big Ten, win it all now. Are you in that camp?
I'm not that far. Unfortunately, there are some deficiencies on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that would keep me from going that far this year. But with that said, I think Matt Rule's done a lot of good. He's reinstilled a toughness about the program. He's emphasized toughness in the program. This Nebraska football program's at its best. And maybe this is true of everybody in the Big Ten, but I feel like it's especially true about Nebraska, that when Nebraska football is right, the lines are really good. They're really emphasized. They're building a lot of talent there. They're back building depth. And not to say they've done that yet, especially, again, on the offensive side of the ball, but it's been a real emphasis for Matt Rule and the staff, and just the idea that they are pushing toughness. They're pushing a more steady approach. One thing that came out of Matt Rule's last comments to the media before they headed north was the idea that they're not pushing starting fast, which sounds kind of odd, but when you think about it, it's so difficult in the early going of a Big Ten game to really do a lot that knocks the other guy out. It's rare that somebody puts 21 on somebody in the first quarter. But Matt Rule is saying, hey, it's important to, obviously you want to play well early, but if we're down early on, it's okay. We just need to keep trading body blows so that we're still there in the fourth quarter. And there's just a lot about Matt Rule's approach to football, how he talks about football, how he seems to think about football, that jives very well with what I think will lead to a winning program for Nebraska in the long term. It's so tough to turn a culture around and a program around, especially one that hasn't been to a bowl game in 6 years, that I'm trying to temper my expectations. I'm optimistic that they can get to a bowl game, but I don't know that I would go as far as a conference title. It is interesting, the sports talk station down here in Omaha, 1620, the last few years has done a poll of where do you think the Huskers record is going to be next year, right at the end of the prior season, and then in the middle of spring ball, and then right before the season. And they have found, no matter how last year went, the prior year went, there's just this consistent curve where everybody who's a Husker fan gets a little more optimistic as the year goes on. And again, I don't know that that's necessarily unique to Nebraska fans, but it's certainly more pervasive among Nebraska fans. So I'm not surprised there are people up north drinking the Kool-Aid. Like I said, I think Matt Rule's going to do a lot of good at the University of Nebraska. And I think this is going to be an improved program, and we'll see that tonight. But I'm not booking my tickets to Indianapolis just yet. I'm at least going to wait till October 1st.
Yeah. And so I guess we could go back here. Now, what are some of the differences now that you've had an off season of Matt Rule? Could you take us back to some similarities and differences from the when Scott Frost was hired to the first game to when Matt Rule got hired to where we are now? What are some of the differences that you've seen from the two head coaching regimes?
I think Matt Rule's done a very good job of coherently laying out how he plans to win at Nebraska. And those plans, again, jive very well with what wins first at Nebraska and secondly in the Big Ten West as far as physicality, pounding away, being very fundamentally sound, not beating yourself. Whereas I think Scott Frost had really bought into the Oregon system of football, which is fast, 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 fast. Well, that leads to a lot of points in the best case scenario. But you're also giving up a lot of points. You're also making a bunch of mistakes. And that style of football can play in other conferences. It plays to an extent in the SEC. It plays probably better in the Big 12. But in the Big Ten Conference, as constituted, and especially with who you're going against in the West, it really left you susceptible. And unfortunately, Scott's, even though Scott was born and raised a Husker, it felt coaching-wise the DNA was more Chip Kelly, and unfortunately, it was a bad fit. The air around the program, there isn't a honeymoon. Well, I'll back off that. Everyone was gaga when Scott Frost was hired. Everyone was talking, we're going to win national championships soon. We're going to win Big Ten championships soon. I think a lot of people were burned by that experience and are tempering their expectations in the short term. Now, if Nebraska starts 4-0, which is a possibility, sorry, Ethan.
It is. I mean, you're not crazy.
I see that. I see the Minnesota game as a coin flip game. But if Nebraska starts 4-0, the positivity, the excitement, the buzz around the program, it'll probably get to those very high, out of control levels. But considering there's not been a bowl game in 6 years, I'm okay with that.
Yes. Ethan, I'll let you go ahead if you got any questions.
I mean, I feel like I agree with all of it. I feel like what you said, Matt Rule actually has like the right outlook for the team. They play the right way. Like you mentioned, physicality. Like that's how you win in the West. Like I think all of us can agree to that. Whether you're Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, the last 2 years, that's how you're going to win the West, and it's not going to change anytime soon. You mentioned the offensive line is the biggest weakness. What other areas would you consider a weakness for them right now?
Well, there are concerns about wide receiver depth. I think Billy Kemp, a transfer from Virginia, who was granted an extra year because of the tragic deaths of 3 of his teammates toward the end of last season, and then he transferred. I think Billy Kemp's going to be a factor for this program day one, game one. A transfer that came in with a good amount of hype around him. He's battling a hand injury. I don't know how quickly he will plug into the lineup, but he was a guy that I think people thought would be a very good second receiver. Xavier Betts is a highly talented kid from the Omaha Metro. He played under Scott Frost. He left the team last year. He had returned to the team after spring ball, but he decided to leave the team in August and said that his heart wasn't in football, which is a shame because he's a highly talented kid, and
he was a high 4-star coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So I think wide receiver depth is going to be a real concern. I'm interested to see how the defense acclimates to the 3-3-5 scheme of Tony White, who comes from Syracuse. I think they can play it, and most of the talk through fall camp has been the defense has had the upper hand, but it just feels like a different scheme. It's a very flexible scheme. I think it can work. It can shift down to a 4-2-5 pretty easily, and I think they have the people to run, and I'm just not entirely sure how it's going to look. I think they have the personnel, though, to where the defense can be pretty solid. I'm worried about the offense and its ability to score points Again, the offensive line has questions. The wide receivers are thin. So if you take Billy Kemp out of the game, how's Nebraska going to move the ball? The run game's okay. They've been pretty high on Gabe Ervin Jr. He's going to start against Minnesota. They've also said they want to rotate pretty aggressively. I think the tight ends are going to be pretty good. They have a kid in Thomas Fedoni who's an elite recruit out of Council Bluffs, but he's just been hurt his whole career. If he can come out and be healthy, that's going to be a real X factor for this team. And then, of course, the transfer Jeff Sims, it's a question. He's experienced. He played at Georgia Tech, but he was also kind of turnover prone at Georgia Tech. And as we talk about the Big Ten West way of winning a football game, you cannot give the ball away. You just flat out cannot. So if you're giving the ball away, that's a pretty big detriment. And so Sims is going to have to limit that if Nebraska's going to go anywhere.
Yeah. I was listening to Joel Klatt's podcast, and he said it today that Nebraska, their O-line, and you mentioned it earlier, there are some concerns there, but he said that it's better than what it has been in the past years, which is a very positive thing to hear, because under the Frost era, both the offensive lines and defensive lines were below average, and that's probably a compliment.
Yeah. Giving them a little grace, yeah. Yeah.
And I was gonna say, and I think that's one thing that I think Matt Rule understands, is that to win the Big Ten, or really to win in any stage of football, you have to be dominant in the trenches. And I think that's another positive of what Nebraska is going to go after. Try to, when you looked at Nebraska, you said it, any team, when you're strong and deep in the trenches, that's how you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, and what happens with the offensive line is going to be very interesting to me, because the offensive line coach is Donovan Raiola. I just flipped through the whole Raiola family, but of course Dominic was the one who played at Nebraska, and then his son is a 5-star quarterback recruit that committed to Georgia. But Donovan was maligned for the offensive line's performance last year. There was some conversation that maybe he and Scott Frost and Mark Whipple had some conflicts as to as far as blocking schemes, blocking approach. The discourse around the offensive line this fall camp has been how there's been a real emphasis in trying to drive people off the ball, which was not the case in the Scott Frost era. It was all about getting a guy's way, essentially. And the new approach emphasized by Matt Rule apparently fits Raiola's approach better. As you look at that offensive line, it's a veteran unit. Bryce Benhart's played quite a bit. The Huskers get Naridan Nuili back. He missed last year due to a PED suspension. So there are Ethan Piper's played a bunch. So there are guys on that line who've played a lot of football. The center, Jeff Scott, is a transfer from Arizona State. So it's going to be maybe one of the real tests for me to see how this new regime is going to fix things, because you're talking about same players, you're talking about the same position coach, but what's going on around them and what is being emphasized from Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach, Matt Rule, down to Raiola, and then down to the offensive line. It'll be one of the interesting litmus tests of where this team is going.
Yeah. And I guess let's go over to the Big Ten as a whole here and talk, this is the last year of the divisions. This is the last of where it seems a little bit more of the original Big Ten before those West Coast team comes in.
Yeah.
And, I think this is setting up to be a very fun year in college football, because this is the last year of when for sure games are going to be played, whether, for all conferences here. But, if you look and just looking at the West, I think there is a logjam of teams that if you bring up Iowa, you bring up Minnesota, you bring up Wisconsin under Luke Fickell, and that's a more popular one in the media. I'm not really entirely sure how I feel yet. I think long term, I think Luke Fickell is going to be a home run. I think Wisconsin will be better, but there's a lot of unknowns. It's new coaching staff. They brought in a bunch of transfers as well. It's a new offense. It's not going to be the Nebraska or the Wisconsin that we knew, where they're going to run the ball 70 times a game. They're going to try to throw the ball a little bit more, and I think they'll still be a little more balanced, but eventually it's going to go more to that air raid style. And then I think Purdue takes a step back, new coach, losing a lot of players. Illinois is a team that I think is somewhat being slept on. They return probably one of the best front sevens, not only the Big Ten, but in college football.
Yeah.
Any of those teams that I just mentioned, I wouldn't be shocked if they came out and were playing in the West. But in the end, I'm going to go with something I do know is I think Iowa, I think they're going to be improved. They've gotten some better athletes. Cade McNamara, the Michigan transfer that they brought in, he's not going to lose you games. He's going to get you into the right play. He's not going to turn the ball over. They're going to be competent because Iowa isn't that far removed from Nate Stanley in 2019, where they averaged 32 points a game. And their biggest problem was they just didn't have a good quarterback. So I think I like Iowa to win the West.
Yeah, and I think their crossover is pretty favorable too. No Michigan, no Ohio State. They do play Penn State, and I think it's out in Happy Valley.
It is. It's on the road.
Yeah. So I think you're right, though, in the idea that the West is pretty tightly packed, and especially that top half. If you tap out Purdue, Ryan Walters is a good coach, but like you said, they lost a lot. It's going to be a big culture shift. Defensive guy after an offensive guy, and then Northwestern's just a mess. So tap them out. Nebraska, first-year coach, a program that's struggled of late. They're I'm not going to say they're totally out of the West picture, but it's also a lot of things would have to happen and happen much quicker than I anticipate them happening. So now we're down to 4. And I think there are huge questions about all 4. Iowa may well be improved offensively. Boy, they can't get much worse. But at the same time, there are injury questions about McNamara. And I just don't know how much better Iowa is going to be offensively. Minnesota, big questions about them, having to replace a chunk of their offensive line, having to replace Tanner Morgan, having to replace Ibrahim. And
schedule?
Yeah, the schedule's not great. So there are questions about Minnesota. And then you look at Wisconsin, and you brought up the fact that they're not going to look like the Wisconsin that we're used to. And that'll be an ongoing transition. I think Luke Fickell's a really good football coach. I don't know if that hire is going to work out. And maybe it's my Nebraska PTSD working here in terms of the culture shift. And in terms of somebody coming in to an offense and to a culture that has been physical, run the football, and going, hey, let's sling it around. Because on one hand, I get that in the Big Ten we're all going to enter in next year. The Big Ten West way may not work. And the Wisconsin way was starting to kind of sputter and stagnate. But at the same time, it worked. And so the minute they struggle, the minute they have questions, issues, stub their toe, the offense isn't moving the ball, they go shotgun on 3rd and 2 and the pass falls incomplete. there are going to be questions. There are going to be, why aren't we doing what we've done that has worked so well for so long? And so I don't know. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin's an interesting case to me, because there are a lot of scenarios in which Luke Fickell works out well and wins. A lot of schools that he could have gone to, Power 5 schools, that he wins. But the idea that they're going to change Wisconsin's culture, I think that's a pretty tremendous risk that's underrated. Now it may work out. I mean, hey, they've got Braylon Allen. They should be able to run the ball this year at least. But I have questions about where that's going to go. So that leaves Illinois. And you're right. Of course, Brett Bielema, part of that family tree of Big Ten West football. There was a physicality. I think Bielema benefited from the physicality that lived in that program before. I don't know that Lovie Smith was ever going to win at Illinois, but I'm still marked by the 2019 game out there. Nebraska played on a Saturday night, 2019, against Illinois. They lost that game, but I don't know how many times I sat there and went, oh my God, they are hitting the crap out of us. They were as physical as anybody. And then you bring in a head football coach in Brett Bielema, who has won and has emphasized physicality and knows how to win in that general area. So it lines up pretty well for Illinois this year. And I just have so many questions. Iowa is guilty until proven innocent offensively, and I don't know what to think about Wisconsin. And I don't know that Minnesota has the horses to win it, especially after Abraham and everybody else graduated. So long story short, I think the West is going to be really compelling, really hotly contested. I have a tough time setting in stone a prediction that I feel good about.
Yeah, and Illinois' schedule, they play Penn State in the their crossover is Penn State and Maryland. They get Penn State at home. They go to Maryland, but I mean, I'd be shocked if Illinois upset Penn State. But I think the story of the Big Ten West since they've gone to that division is, outside of a couple of years, they just beat each other up, and it's usually just the team with the least amount of losses ends up winning it.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be no different this year.
Yep. So, go ahead.
I think you can rule out Northwestern and Purdue right away. Neither one of those guys have the horses. Unless Hudson Card goes like full Heisman, like Purdue's not going to win. Nebraska, they probably you could say they have the most talent in terms of like high school ratings, just recruits and general players. Like depending on how fast Rule can get those guys to buy in, get them to believe. Like they could be a factor, 100%. Anyone that says otherwise is just probably stuck in the old Scott Frost era still. Yeah. But Illinois, I just don't know if they have offensively. I'm not going to lie. They lose Chase Brown. They lose their quarterback. Like that's a lot of firepower to replace right there, even with how great their defense is. Minnesota, like they basically have to sweep the West to have any chance. Because when you go to Ohio State, you play home versus Michigan, you have a 90% chance of losing both those games at the best. Like you're not going to have a better than a 10% chance either game. So that's even like Ibrahim. You mentioned it. He's gone. This offense is going to look so different than what it has the past 2-3 years with Morgan and Ibrahim behind us. But Wisconsin, I'm with Nate. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Like they could sling it. They could look amazing, but at the same time, if they could look like shit. Like they could be the next Scott Frost. That offense doesn't fit what the Big Ten West is. We just saw that. So I mean, who the hell knows? Gun to my head, I'd probably pick Iowa. I think they might have the best. They have the best defense, I feel like, in the West. And McNamara just can't fuck it up. It's as simple as that. I feel like if he doesn't screw it up, like they're going to be fine. If he doesn't go full Petrus, there's probably a good shot they're gonna go because their crossover games are pretty damn favorable.
Yeah,
and not to mention, Ethan, on Minnesota's end too is all the culture problems that are going on within PJ Fleck's
God
program.
forbid. God forbid.
But that I and I think PJ Fleck has, joking aside, he has built up a good culture, and he's proven that he's really good on focusing on what his team is good at. When you look at that 2019 year where they had two NFL receivers in Bateman and Tyler Johnson, and probably another one if he's able to stay healthy, Chris Ottman-Bell, who's going to be back this year. They threw the ball around the
30
field.
times.
And yep. So I mean, they can, but that's the hardest part with Minnesota is that schedule is nasty.
It's awful.
It's funny, and moving forward, we're talking a lot about this year, and naturally so. But it's going to be a real concern for me in the setup of this league and how they schedule. And we had schedules for next year, and they all got crumpled up and thrown away in the conference realignment. And especially now where it's the top two teams, no divisions, there's going to be so little consistency and so little continuity as far as scheduling that it may be your draw may determine whether or not you have a shot at the conference championship. I would like to see divisions come back. I mean, in an 18-team conference, there's just no way, in my opinion, you can schedule it in a manner that's fair to where you can sit there and say, these are the top two teams. And we have determined it pretty clearly that these are the top two. Like I said, it's going to be who draws Maryland, who draws Rutgers, who draws Indiana, who draws Northwestern and Purdue. I mean, and I don't think that's a very good way to determine a conference championship. I also think, divisions are the division championship is a nice secondary goal. As we sit here, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State are realistically the three teams that are going to win the Big Ten, right?
Yeah.
But, if you're sitting there as Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, it's good to have that secondary goal of, hey, let's win the West. Let's win our side and get to Indianapolis. And so you don't have 16 teams just sitting there going, well, what are we playing for? So I hope the conference reconsiders, but all the discussion to this point has been that divisions will go away.
Yeah. And I've also heard, too, that in 5 years that there's presidents that are talking that they don't see this sustainable. I'm kind of hoping it does, and I'd like to see, teams go back. But if they do stick with getting rid of divisions, I just hope it's not whoever does the Pac-12 scheduling goes over to the Big Ten scheduling, because that's how a conference dissolves. And, you mentioned the big three out of the East, and let's go over there. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Penn State and Ohio State both replacing quarterbacks. Ohio State probably has the best player in the conference in Marvin Harrison Jr. They just announced Kyle McCord is going to be the starter, but Devin Brown will also see some playing time. Travion Henderson is back. Mayan Williams is going to be back. Both should be back healthy. I think you're going to see some shifts probably. Brian Hartline is also a new play caller for him as well. I think as they try to bring this as whoever the quarterback is, whether it be McCord or Brown, I think you're going to see early on in the year, I think you're going to see Ohio State try to rely on those two running backs to help bring them along and, take the pressure off McCord or Brown. And, they get Penn State at home, but they have to go on the road to Michigan. Penn State, on paper, they're as talented. They bring in a quarterback that they've wanted forever in Drew Aller, finally going to be the guy. And they got those two sophomore running backs that are really good. Maryland is a team that people are kind of laying as a team that could play spoiler, which Michigan plays them the week before Ohio State, which is definitely going to be a trap game. But they have a really good quarterback, but they also had to replace 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen, which is Talia how Tagovailoa, what he is a smaller guy and he's had injury troubles in the past seasons. So keeping him upright is a question mark.
Yeah.
And in the long run, I don't think Maryland has the horses to win any of those 3 games. And now we get to Michigan. Go Blue. This is the year. I'm fully expecting to have my heart ripped out again on New Year's Eve or the Monday after. But this, they bring back J.J. McCarthy. They bring back Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum. They bring back Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, Colston Loveland. The defense is loaded. There's other guys that they're very high on as well. Yes.
We have some breaking news. Husker volleyball broke the world record for the longest crowd ever at a women's sporting event. 92,003 people.
There it is.
That's insane. Yep. Volleyball. Yep.
So.
Sorry to interrupt.
We love it here.
That's crazy
for Nebraska athletics.
Very cool.
That is awesome that they did that.
Very similar to grapple on the gridiron.
Yes.
But double the people.
Yeah. Nebraska's just better than Iowa. And Grant is not here, so he can't defend himself. So we're just going to kick him while he's down.
Well, it's just factual information. I mean, criminy, we beat them last year. Hey,
you played spoiler.
Yeah.
In their house.
Yep. Ruined their trip to Indianapolis. But, yeah, I'll tell you, there's been a buzz about Nebraska volleyball. And hey, Nebraska volleyball is huge. They matter. They've sold out every home game for 20 years. They've gone to a bigger arena, the Devaney Center, for the last 10. This is an even greater expression of how much volleyball means to the state. I mean, it's not like they sold $5 tickets here. You had to put $20 on the table to possibly not have a very good seat to watch a volleyball game.
Wow.
And I mean, it's a sellout. It's a sellout crowd, and it sold out in 48 hours. It wasn't like it even trickled or filtered in. It was 48 hours. It was a blink of an eye.
Are they a revenue sport?
Yes, they
are.
In fact,
okay.
They are the only women's Power 5 team, and I think the only women's team, period, in college athletics that turns a profit.
That's
Once
wild.
You factor in ticket sales, the donations required to have the better tickets, it may be a deal where you can't get a season ticket for Nebraska volleyball without a donation.
That's crazy.
Yeah. All their games are broadcast statewide. 20 of them are on TV. It is an incredible machine, and tonight's a celebration of that. And it also celebrates how big volleyball is in the state, because, it's at all levels. It's not just Nebraska. Creighton's nationally ranked. Omaha was an NCAA tournament team. UNK is always very good. Midland, I think, was top ranked in NAIA. The high school programs are among the best in the country. So volleyball just means a lot to the state.
Very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. Back to the Big Ten East, but I can't not. I think Michigan. I think they find a way to go into Penn State and win, and then I also think they beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
They go back to Indy for the 3rd year in a row. They beat Iowa and Michigan. They find themselves in the playoff again, and that's my Big Ten prediction.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, they have the fewest questions. Like you said, they're the only one of the big three that brings back their quarterback. There's some bad energy in Ohio State right now. And having to replace a quarterback, you're going to have mistakes offensively that get people kind of turning their wheels against Ryan Day, which I don't think is terribly fair, but that's how fans work. And especially where Michigan has won that game 2 straight years, has gone to the college football playoff, is likely to do so for a 3rd straight year. I hear the rumble of a distant storm that's going to be showing up in November. Not that I know anything, not that I even think that Ryan Day will get fired necessarily, but there's just so much so much, unhappiness around Ohio State for a program that's really stinking good.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're risking really stinking good in pursuit of great. And like I said, my Nebraska PTSD is showing here that, you don't push out a good coach thinking you can do a whole lot better than what they've done. And I hope they don't make that mistake. But I think the negativity that'll surround that will be a distraction for them, especially with a new quarterback.
Well, and the other part too, that's, I think about surrounding the Ryan Day's job security is that, and it's not being talked about a whole lot, but Gene Smith is retiring in July. Yep. So whoever they hire as the new AD, he didn't hire Ryan Day. So it's a lot easier to cut bait with a guy that you didn't hire, you don't have a connection with, to just say, oh, hey, you're not being up to the standard. You've lost to Michigan and whatever, that, hey, we can go somewhere better. And the AD trying to make a splash of a hire, trying to make a name for himself.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And again, that's not something those aren't chickens that'll necessarily come home to roost this year, because I can't imagine Gene Smith firing him and hiring a coach on the way out the door. But there again, that'll be talk, that'll be conversation, that'll be worry that goes into the following year and really hinders them moving forward.
I'm off the Ohio State train too. I know, Dylan, you have to be. You're a Michigan fan, but until they beat Michigan, you can't buy them. Like, they've gotten their ass kicked 2 straight years versus them. It's been absolutely just demoralizing for them. So until Ryan Day shows something, I'm not going to buy into him. But I might be a year early on these guys, but I'm going Penn State. I think they have some serious talent. Aller, I think, could be an absolute stud. I don't think Franklin's really had a quarterback of his pedigree and just talent. You add that 1-2 punch.
They actually have an offensive line too.
They have the left tackle came back. I mean, their defense has stars at all 3 levels. Like, again, they're young. They are a very young team. They have sophomores, freshmen all over the place, but man, they're going to be freaking good.
Yeah, I see them coming, and it's funny. There's been so little buzz around Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
James Franklin's done a hell of a job there.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's give a little credit to Bill O'Brien amid a situation that a lot of people, myself first and foremost, thought would be totally unmanageable, replacing Joe Paterno, settling down that program and that culture after, all that scandal. But first with Bill O'Brien and then James Franklin, they've done a great job of not just settling that thing down, but getting them in a position to compete year in and year out, and especially where you have a high talent quarterback that you can have out there for 2 or 3 years and grow with and see him grow. And especially in this brave new world of the transfer portal, if he looks good, I'm sure there are receivers in the MAC and the American Athletic Conference that are going to go, hey, that dude could make me some money, to where Penn State next year could really be a thing. Ethan, I think you're right. It's a year early on the Nittany Lions, but that's a stock that's trending up. With the Ohio State stock slowly trending down.
Yeah, I took a shot in the dark. Why not?
Yeah. Ethan is also the same guy that picked Utah to win the national title last year, so he's not afraid to make a bold prediction here.
I'm not. I got a bold one coming. You don't worry. Got a bold one coming. You sit there.
Oh boy. Okay.
And Nate, I do apologize. I should have asked how much time you have, because if you do have to go, we understand. But if you want to hang out and chat with us and do the rest of the Power 5 previews, we'd love to have you. But if you have to go, we'll actually change some things up here, because we try to we end the podcast with always something non-sports related, a non-sport related question. We would move that up, and then Ethan and I would wrap up the rest of the Power 5. So
why don't we do the non-sports thing and wrap it up, because
okay,
I do need to get some sleep. I work overnights right now at a warehouse.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, so.
Oof.
oh, gotcha. So okay, yeah. Well, then we will. So it's called Curveball of the Week here,
Okay.
and I have it. We usually do like a little bit of a rotation. So my question this week is, and I was thinking about this today, what is the laziest thing that you do? Now, and I'll explain this one. So now, I just thought of this today because now we're all adults, and bills and responsibilities to pay. Some companies have not gotten with the times where you can't just go online and pay a bill, or you actually still have to send in or mail a stamp. Send it in the mail, and keep the post office in business. So mine is that I don't think I've ever gone to the post office to ever buy stamps. The laziest thing I do is, if I need something mailed, I usually will just text my mom and say, "Hey, I need an envelope and a stamp. Can I run home and grab one?"
You got to go somewhere anyway. Why not just go to the damn mail or the mail post office?
Too far. And she God love her,
Oh, sure.
she coddles me in that way, where it's like, because sometimes I still get some mail or bills that go to her house, or my parents' house still. I don't know. I'm not sure why. I thought I had everything changed over, but sometimes apparently I don't. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you got this." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was probably a bill or something." She's like, "Oh okay, I'll run it over with an envelope and a stamp for you to mail." So
That's right, nice of her.
yeah.
Boy, I tend to be lazy about a lot of things. It's tough for me to pick one thing where I'm most lazy. Bad about leaving laundry on the floor. Bad about sinks in the dish or dishes in the sink, not in the dishwasher. Maybe the laziest is not big on cooking. So I'm big on eating, obviously, but I'm not big on cooking.
We all are. Yeah. That's another good one, Nate, is the laundry, or when you do the laundry, instead of folding the clothes, you just grab them from the dryer as you need them.
Oh yeah. Yep, absolutely.
You literally just called mine. It's literally leaving dry clothes in the dryer. We did laundry. What day was it? Today's Wednesday. We did laundry Sunday. See, Sunday or Monday, one of the two. I did. Hannah started a load today. I just threw all of them back in there with the clothes in the dryer because they've been sitting in there so long. So now I'll probably have to do that again here in like another day.
Yeah. Oh, and I do have one more question, Nate.
Yeah.
And here it is. So I know you have a great disdain for the University of Colorado, but I have a spin zone question here that I think might get you to cheer for the Buffs this year.
No.
Now, just hear me out. Just hear me out. So,
No.
would you be? All right,
close it, but the odds are very, very slim.
Okay, I'm still confident in this. Would you be okay if Colorado goes 3-9 this year and replaces the 2021 Nebraska team as the greatest 3-9 team of all time?
Okay, who are the three against? If the three are not against,
Let me pull up the Colorado schedule here.
They
Yeah.
beat USC. That's
And
one of them. Keep them out of the playoff.
Yeah, okay.
So, Colorado. So they are Colorado State,
Forget that.
Colorado State, Arizona State, and I'll throw in one decent win. I'll throw in Oregon State.
Okay.
Ooh, Oregon State.
I mean, if they, as long as they go 3-9 and one of the 9 is Nebraska, I'll be okay. But let's be clear, I'm not rooting. I will never root for them. I'm racking my brain right now to consider a scenario where I would root for Colorado. I'm not sure I can come up with it, and especially with Deion Sanders.
That's
I
so
hated him
true.
as a player. I hate him as a coach. I hate the way he's building that program. I think it's bad for college football. I don't think it's going to work. And, Tom Luganville, who made his bones as a talent evaluator, he called Colorado's roster the worst in college football on something I saw on social media yesterday. And I think he meant worse in Power 5. But the point is, it's going to be awfully tough for Colorado. I mean, I think they're terribly thin. I don't think they have anything on the lines. And even in the Pac-12, you need some beef. And if Shedeur Sanders is ground beef by week 3, which is entirely possible, they're going nowhere. So, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was a fair question. I don't know if the best 3-9 team of all time is something to write home about. So I figured you would be more than happy to. And I don't know if you remember me texting you after I went to a coaching clinic down in Denver, and they had the O-line coach for Colorado. Is the guys that they had in there? They had one offensive lineman that could bench over 300 pounds.
I remember that.
Yeah, I do remember you texting that, and that sounds about right. I mean, Deion's flipping the roster because there wasn't a whole lot there, but I don't like the way he's going about it. I think they'll be. It's a good thing they're in the Pac-12 because as thin as they're going to be and as bad as they're going to be in the middle, in the beef, the offensive line, the D lines, I just don't see a path for success for them this season or really moving forward.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to find out, and hopefully you do not have to eat crow in about a week.
Yeah. I believe me, if Nebraska does not win that game, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm probably not going to be reachable by most forms of communication for some time.
That's fair. There's a couple of kids that I coach that are Nebraska fans, and they said we've discussed a bet on if Nebraska beats Michigan or Michigan beats Nebraska of what hasn't the rule the stipulations or what's going to be happened hasn't been stipulated yet. But I did tell them that if Nebraska does beat Michigan, I just won't show up to practice that week.
You know what? There are a lot of responsibilities that I'm not going to show up for the following week if Nebraska beats Michigan for entirely different reasons.
He will not be coherent for a week.
I'm going to be carrying goalposts down down O Street and probably I-80.
So are you working on getting like a zip line down to the stadium if that were to happen, so you can just go down and help with
That's a good thought. That's a good thought.
Not a bad idea.
I would love to see that. Just Nebraska, see that plastered all over the internet. Nebraska PA announcer propels down, and I might just clip and share this and say, please credits.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not quite
But-
that brave. They usually task the PA guy with telling people, "Hey, stay off the field, don't tear down the goalposts." And
As we all know, that's not going to happen anyway.
I'll do the read. I'll do my job.
Seems fair. Best of luck tomorrow.
All right. Yeah.
Hey, thank you much, gentlemen. Great being with you.
Yeah. Yes, always good to chat. Can't wait to do it again, Nate.
Sounds good, fellas. Anytime.
Yep. See you later, Nate.
See ya.
Maybe. Hey.
All right. Special thanks again to Nate. Always enjoy our conversations with him. Always gives us good insight. Always fun to chat with him. And since we did the Big Ten with Nate, we're going to go to another conference that has big in it. We're going to go over to the Big 12 and preview the Big 12. And this is a conference that doesn't do divisions, but they, the top two teams, they have some new teams in the conference this year. Before Texas and Oklahoma leave for the SEC, Kansas State is the returning Big 12 champion, where they beat TCU. And I think Kansas State has a lot of reasons for optimism. I think they return their quarterback. Chris Kleiman coach team is always going to be well coached. They're going to be disciplined on defense. They're going to be in the right spot. They're not going to do things to lose them the game. And I think their schedule sets up very favorably as well. So I like Kansas State to get back to the Big 12 title game. And who I think they are playing is, I'm going to go with, and I hate that I'm going to do this, and I can't believe I'm about to say what I am about to say.
Say it.
But I think Texas is back in the Big 12 championship. I think they've got a quarterback. You saw Quinn Ewers grow up. He cut his hair. He's acting more mature. They've got all the receivers. And you go back and you look at the recruiting classes that Texas has put together. They have put a heavy emphasis on the offensive and defensive lines. And that's how you're gonna win the talents there. Can they put it together, or will they do some Texasing where they're gonna lose a few games they shouldn't? I think you're gonna see you're gonna get a good idea of what Texas is gonna be when they go into Tuscaloosa in week 2 and play Alabama. And who knows? We might have to amend from there. But right now, I think it's Kansas State and Texas. And I think Texas beats Kansas State in the regular season, but Kansas State gets its revenge in the Big 12 championship game because all Chris Kleiman does is win championships. So I like Kansas State to repeat. I think this is a conference that's going to beat the hell out of each other, similar to what they do where they just can't get out of their own way. I don't think TCU, there's a team that's going to have a magical run like TCU did. I think TCU is going to take a step back. And in the end, I'm going to go with what I know, and I know Kansas State, and I think they are the back-to-back Big 12 champions.
I don't know. This one, it could be a number of teams. Like you said, they're going to beat the living hell out of each other, but Oklahoma, I just don't buy them. I don't know. They just haven't been Oklahoma the last couple of years. I don't know if they're just looking forward to, the SEC move too much or what, but they don't seem to be, there in it all the time. Texas, I just don't think they haven't shown it either. They've showed glimpses, but even Ewers, he even struggled a little bit, and he's supposed to be the savior of Texas football, but not outside of
highest ranked recruit in college history.
Yeah, exactly, and he hasn't been that. Kansas State, good. Lose Deuce Vaughn, lose their starting cornerback. Obviously, it's only 2 players, but those are 2 key pieces that got drafted in the top 6 round. What is this? It's 1 6th round, 1 2nd round, I think.
They had a first rounder. Their DN is playing for the Chiefs.
That's right. The Chiefs guy took them. And then TCU is just not going to be the same without Max Duggan. Let's just say that. That's 100% true. I'm surprisingly going to take. God, I don't even know who the heck I want them to play. We're just going to say Kansas State plays them. They're gonna play my champion, but we're staying in the state. We're going with Kansas. This is the 17 starters return, man. 17. Like, I know it's just a number, and but they weren't bad last year. They won a couple games they never should have, and they probably should have won a couple more. But 17 of their 22 starters return. I'm just gonna go with it. That was that big ballsy pick I was talking about you and Nate a couple minutes ago. But why not? Let's get weird in Dallas.
And Mark Mangino is going to come back and celebrate with them.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
So that is the Big 12. Let's go down over to the East Coast. Let's go over to the ACC, where the reigning champion is Clemson. They are, they've won the last 5 of the last 6 ACC I don't know the exact number, but they've won since I've been in college. They've won the ACC championship, other than maybe 2 years probably. And
yeah, it sounds about right.
They have Kate Klubnik coming back. They've got new offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley. And I don't think that it's been talked about enough. And you hear this a lot more on a lot of college football shows where they talked about how Clemson, their offensive scheme the last few years was terrible. It wasn't good. It was very simple, very easy.
Did they get rid of divisions?
Yes.
Okay,
yep, they did.
I was looking at it, I was like, wait a second, they got rid of divisions? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
And they just had better athletes than everybody. They knew it, and they were just going to bully you. And the last 2 years, that has caught up to them because they didn't have the quarterback that could get them over to they didn't have a Deshaun Watson. They didn't have a Trevor Lawrence. And it bit them in the butt. So I think bringing in Garrett Riley is a little bit under talked about. I don't know the last time a Riley and a quarterback has not worked out. So I like Clemson back in Charlotte for the ACC championship. And I bounced around back and forth with a few teams. I think NC State is a team that is a little bit slept on. I think they're still going to be salty. I think Louisville, their schedule sets up very nicely. They've got a very easy schedule. I know a new coach, Jeff Braun, they're going to be much better. Well, much better. That does not sound good at all. They're going to be a well-coached team compared to the last few years. I just don't think they have the horses. I think they're probably about a year or two away. The other one that people are talking about is North Carolina. But I don't. They've got probably the number 2 quarterback in the draft in Drake May, but I don't like how their schedule sets up, and their defense cannot stop anybody. So I'm not sure how I feel about North Carolina. Like Ethan said, they got rid of the divisions. Florida State is another team that a lot of people are picking to be in the playoff this year. Jordan Travis is back. There's a lot of hype around them. They ended the season on a high note, albeit it's not talked about that the teams that they played towards the end of the season were not very good. But in the end, I think the way Mike Norvell has built the Florida State program, I think that is going to be good enough. And even as tough as their schedule is I wouldn't be shocked if they start out the season 2-2 because they play LSU week 1, they play Clemson in week 4. And then if they can go on a run and win it, and Clemson being their only loss, which I think happens, I like Florida State and Clemson to match up in the ACC championship game. But in the end, I think Clemson, their talent, their scheme, I think wins out over Florida State. And Clemson is the ACC champion again.
I have the exact same teams. Clemson's Clemson. Like, they're the class of the ACC. They have been for probably at least the past 5 years. I kind of feel like they've peaked, though. Like, they were up there with Alabama for a bit. Couple years. They won those 2 national titles. I want to say, was it 2?
Yep, it was in 16 and 18.
Yeah, they won those 2, and then ever since, it's kind of been creeping down, kind of coming back to, I don't want to say the median, because they're still obviously way better than anyone else in the ACC, but they're not what they were. And I'm going to go Florida State to win the ACC. 16th nationally in points per game last year, returned 8 starters. They had 3 impact transfers on the defensive side with on top of their first team all freshman defensive end that had I think 5 sacks last year. So they're adding that. They kind of have the young offense. They have veterans now on the outside. Their weapons are insanely good. They have a 6'7" receiver that had 900 yards last year. So like they have weapons for Travis to throw to. And he 24 touchdowns to 5 picks or something last year. He's probably going to improve on that even more. So I'm going to take Florida State to win the ACC.
All right. Wow. Okay. So we've got we've got Big 10, Big 12, ACC. Let's go over to the East or the West Coast and talk about the final year of the Pac-12. Now, this is the worst scheduled conference in the country, and it's cost them playoff spots in the past, and I think it's going to cost them again this year because I think USC, they've got the best player in college football in Caleb Williams. The dude is absolutely electric, but similar to like North Carolina defense, they can't stop anybody. They still, I know it was week 1, but there's still a lot of cause. They cannot tackle. That doesn't look like it's been improved. And an Alex Grinch defense and a Lincoln Riley led team, I can't trust them to win the big game. And if you go pull up their last 6 games and tell me that they're going to go undefeated, run the table, or have just 1 loss, I don't know. Because, Ethan, I'll read this to you. So, starting October 14th, they go to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame looks much improved. We haven't talked about them, but Sam Hartman looks like the real deal.
They look very good.
And Notre Dame, they've got 2 of their 3 big games at home. And they should have, and then 2 of their 3 games, I guess I would say it was a toss-up. But Sam Hartman last year at Wake Forest threw 6 touchdowns against Clemson. So October 14th, they go to South Bend. And then they get Utah at home, the reigning Pac-12 champions, a team that they lost to twice last year. And then they get 1 cupcake, they get Cal. And then they get Washington at home on the 4th of November. And then on the 11th, they go to Oregon. And then they finish with Battle Los Angeles against USC or UCLA, which is never going to be an easy game. That's a rivalry game. Those teams both are going to put up points. Early teaser, UCLA, USC, take the over. And I mean, I see at least, I wouldn't be shocked 2 or 3 losses on that in their last 6 games.
That's a brutal stretch.
It is. And with that, I think Utah, I know they're going to be without Cam Rising tomorrow or tonight starting the year. He's still recovering from a ACL injury. Bo Nix looked rejuvenated. He was not the up and down. He was a very steady guy. He's got some good Heisman odds as well, I believe. And, he's played in his fair share of big games. So I like Oregon to beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship.
Utah, you're following me.
Yep. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I think they might get off to a slow start. I think once Cam Rising comes back, he's going to come back at a good time. And I also, just started thunder in here. And the end of their schedule, I'll read you their last 6 games. They got USC on the 21st. And then they have Oregon. Well, not off to a great start, but then they get Arizona State and then Washington. So they still have 3 tough games going in of those last 6, but then they finish out with Arizona and Colorado.
Ooh, it's better than what USC has.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a sleeper team to keep an eye on is Oregon State. They bring in DJ Uiagalelei. I think under Jonathan Smith, who is just a damn good football coach, and they're going to upset some teams and ruin some people's day. I almost put Oregon State in over over Oregon, but in the end, I just went with Oregon because I like Bo Nix maybe a little bit better than DJU.
I'm gonna go. I gotta pull my notes up here, but I'm gonna go Oregon State out of the North. I think they're probably the best team in there.
No divisions.
Oh, they don't have divisions either. That's right. God dang it!
Yeah.
All these people are switching on us. I'll still take Oregon State. They're ranked to start the year. They're gonna be good. And it's gonna be funny because then no one wants them next year with the realignment. So you have one good year and then they kind of kick you aside. Okay, you're gonna go back to sucking. You brought up USC's gauntlet. But I just don't know how many teams can put the points up. I know their defense sucks. They gave up 28 to San Jose State. I don't even think they forced a turnover, actually, that game. I know they didn't throw a pick for sure. But I just don't think anyone's going to be able to keep up with Caleb Williams. He is so freaking good, and that offense is so explosive. So I'll take USC coming out of the Pac-12.
All right, and then let's go to the stepbrother of the Big Ten for the amount of Big Ten quarterbacks that are in the SEC. We'll start in the East. It's Georgia, then everybody else. Georgia's schedule sets up very nicely for them. They have nobody in the non-conference. Their one game that I think is maybe, and I wouldn't even consider it a question mark at this point, but a game that I think is probably their best chance to lose. It is when they have to go on the road to Knoxville and play the Volunteers. But I still don't think that's going to be I still think Georgia pulls that one out. And it sets up that the East is going to be Georgia, and if not, Kirby Smart should be fired because there's way too much talent on that team to not be playing in Atlanta and having your fans bark at a team from the West. And the West, I think it's a 2-horse race between Alabama and LSU. Alabama, losing the top pick in the draft or top two or two of the three with Bryce Young and Will Anderson gone. Losing a lot of nice, really good players off that roster, but they've had the top 2 recruiting classes in the country the last 2 years. They're going to be a little bit young. I think you're going to see Alabama shift back more over to the older Alabama where they're going to be more of a run-first team. There's questions at quarterback. Is it going to be Jalen Milroe or Tyler Buckner, the Notre Dame transfer? They've got a new offensive coordinator in Tommy Rees, and a new defensive coordinator as well. But I think you're going to see Alabama go back to more of their days of old, where they're going to try to pound it down your throat. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play more complementary football, and it's also because their receivers aren't as good as what we're used to seeing either. So, and LSU is I've bounced back and forth. Jaden Daniels is a little bit too inconsistent for me to really, where if we could get a consistent Jaden Daniels, I think without question LSU is the top team. But they also play Florida State to start the year. And they're going to be without their best player, who was suspended for signing autographs like a month before the NIL was enacted, which is just classic NCAA, just a joke. And a staple of Brian Kelly teams is they'll lose at least one game they shouldn't. They beat Alabama last year, great. They also lost to Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is going to be looking to bounce back too. I can't trust Jimbo Fisher. They also had a lot of transfers, but I also don't think they're going to be as bad as what they were last year. I think Mississippi State is a team that could play spoiler. I'm not saying they're going to go out and win it because, like I said, I think the West is a 2-horse race between Alabama and LSU, but I think I saw something that Mississippi State returns 9 of 11 starters. They have a seasoned quarterback in Will Rogers. They're not going to be throwing the ball as much. They hired the D coordinator from last year. So I think Mississippi State is a team to keep an eye on, even though they've been predicted to go take last by most people in the polls. But in the end, like I said, the game's going to come down to Alabama LSU in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I think Alabama wins this game because they are at home, and that's going to be the difference is where they're going to have that home crowd behind them. I think Jaden Daniels is going to get a little shaky. He's going to throw the ball away or fumble it, and that's going to be the difference between winning and losing that game. And so we're back in familiar territory where it is Georgia, Alabama. And in the end, Alabama is able to run through most of the SEC, but Georgia is set up specifically to stop the run, and they're going to make Alabama try to throw the ball. And with the question marks at quarterback for Alabama, which has turned more into a quarterback-centric program, unlike Georgia, where Georgia just has football playing Jessies all over the field. And Carson Beck, all he has to do is just take care of the ball. I like Georgia to three-peat as the SEC champion.
I'm not going to get in as in-depth as you. Until someone beats Georgia or Alabama, that's what we're going to go with. They're the thoroughbreds. Until someone beats them, you're irrelevant. You're not going to get any of my, picks. But Georgia's just so freaking good everywhere. They reload. They don't rebuild. I know other colleges do the same thing, but Georgia's has been different the last 2 to 3 years. And I don't think this is going to be that much different. So, I think Georgia rolls as the number 1 seed into the playoff for the 3rd straight year.
Yeah. And, I guess I didn't plan on going as in depth as I did. I just, sometimes, you just start rambling and you end up where we ended up. And
I totally get it.
I'd like to think it sounded somewhat smart, but
it didn't sound terrible. I'm not saying that. It was just you put a lot more effort in than I did.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even say that because I was writing out my predictions. You look at some of those conferences that you can kind of you can write down. You knew Georgia was going to win the East. You knew it's a 2-horse race. So that one was easy. And when it came down to it, I think, like I said, Alabama's at home for this game. I think that's going to be enough for Alabama to win it. So with that, let's go to our playoff predictions here. And who, Ethan, are your top 4 and seeds we'll go by?
Well, I just gave my number 1, and that was Georgia. Tell someone beats the champs, they're going to be number 1. They're probably going to look the part. Number 2, I have Penn State. They make it through the East. I don't know if they beat both Michigan and Ohio State, but I have them getting maybe 1 loss. If they win both, great. It's possible they win both, but probably not. Number 3, I went Florida State. They beat Clemson. They take the ACC. They get in there as a 3 seed. And the 4th one, Notre Dame. The last time they beat Navy to start the year in Ireland, they went to the national championship. They got absolutely steamrolled by Alabama. But that's besides the point. History repeats itself. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia to get to the national championship, but they at least get to the playoff.
Okay. So do you have Georgia 3-peating?
Yeah, I think it'll be a Georgia, Penn State, and I do have Georgia 3-peating. And if they don't, and Penn State beats them, there's probably a good chance Penn State goes back-to-back next year.
It certainly could be possible. But my playoff predictions, Georgia at 1. There's no question about it. They are the best team in the country by far and away. And they, in the 4 seed, I have them playing Ohio State again.
Nice.
I think Ohio State makes it through with 1 loss, and that's good enough. I think it's going to be a battle, but I think we get a rematch of the playoff game last year. And in the end, I think Georgia finds a way to win that game again. I just don't think Ohio State this year quite has the horses up front to compete with Georgia. And the defense still for Ohio State is a question mark, and Donovan Edwards is still running. as is the Georgia receivers running wide open downfield. So I like Georgia to get back to the national title. And then in the other game, other playoff is Michigan I have as the 2 seed, and my 3 seed is also in the ACC, but it is Clemson. I think the Garrett Riley effect is going to be real, and I think Michigan has a chance to get some revenge on Garrett Riley, and I think they get it, which finally sets up which should have been back-to-back years, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. Where in the past we've moved on. I'm a goldfish I'm trying to be a goldfish about it, and it sets up Georgia versus Michigan, 2 heavyweights, and do I really have to? Michigan's going to win it all.
Just say it.
Yeah, Michigan's going to win it all. I'm fully ready. You can clip this, share this, post this, save this for everything. But Michigan is winning the national title this year. It is tough to win 3 straight national titles. Michigan has a chip on their shoulder. They're not going to take any team lightly. They are going to war. They're going to win it because their head coach is suspended over buying a cheeseburger over some bogus thing. That's just going to they're trying to tear them apart, but they're going to rally together. They're going to win the 3rd straight Joe Moore Award. And then they're also going to have a Heisman winner in J.J. McCarthy. I think J.J. takes those next steps. I think, I hope he's worked on his intermediate throws, those easy throws, which he's tend to miss at times. I think he put in the work this summer, and I think he's going to fix that to where he's not just a home run thrower and show up his ability to throw the deep ball. I think you're going to see more easy throws for JJ that he doesn't miss. And Michigan and Jim Harbaugh win their first national title since 1997.
Cue the Rouser.
But that's our FBS preview. I guess we could talk a little bit about the NDSU. There's not a whole lot. They play at US Bank. They play Eastern Washington. A little bit disappointed. They did not promote this hardly at all. I remember when they played at Target Field. Everywhere, from when it was announced to the game leading up, it was promoted. It was played to the nth degree. It was, when they announced it and it got closer, it was like, hey, Grant's not here tonight, but it was, hey, let's go to this. This should be fun. And it was a great day. It was so much fun going there, going to Target Field, watching the Bison play Trey Lance's opening game. And, it sounds like there's not going to be a whole lot of seats sold for this game, which is unfortunate. And also doesn't help that Eastern Washington has kind of fallen on the back burner a little bit. They were 3-8 last year. They were the worst team against the run in FCS, not just in the Big Sky.
Oh, wow.
In the entire FCS.
It's hard to do.
And when you play NDSU, you have to be able to stop the run. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I want to see Cole Payton throw the ball. I want to see Cam Miller throw the ball. We've talked a lot about the receivers that, go make plays. I think Zach Mathis is the guy this year. I would like to see him, get 6 or 7 catches or, on a 3rd and 8 or a 3rd and long, go to him and convert it and try to make passing look easier, because the last couple of years, especially last year, anytime NDSU completed a pass, it was a small miracle.
This is true. It's SDSU, NDSU. That's what's going to be in the FCS again.
Yep. Yeah. I think I was listening to a podcast today. They were saying pick the semifinalists, and it's going to be 3 of the 4. I think it's going to be SDSU, NDSU, Montana State, and that 4th one is up for grabs.
Maybe
it's a 3-horse race in the FCS. What's that?
Sam Houston, are they still in FCS?
No, they're FBS now.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, them, James Madison, Jacksonville State. It's really, really diluted the FCS pool.
Yeah.
And I still think there's a huge gap between Montana State and NDSU and SDSU.
Yes.
And SDSU and Montana State play, I believe, in week 3 or week 4.
Who does?
SDSU and Montana State.
Oh, that'd be a good one.
So, yeah. Now, do you got plans to watch the game tonight?
I do. I'll just be sitting here. Hannah's not feeling the greatest, so I was gonna have Grant come over, but since she's not feeling great, Grant is going to stay home. I haven't even texted him, so he might find out by listening to the podcast. Who knows?
Yeah.
But no, just hanging out. Work Saturday, so can't go to the Bison game, but yeah, it'll be football's back. That's what matters.
It is. It's that's kind of my plan on Saturday is to sit down on the couch and watch 15 hours of football all day from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. and hopefully celebrate a Titan victory from Friday the night before. And DSU has their home opener. Maybe go check out the tailgate as long as Michigan comes out and takes care of business against East Carolina. Hopefully just, play a clean game. No boneheaded mistakes, no false starts, no turnovers, things like that. They do that, I'll be pleased with it. Should win by a lot. They're 36-point favorites, but
that should work.
Yeah, and then it'll flow right into the NDSU Eastern Washington game, and then some nightcaps, which I don't even know off the top of my head which games are being played, but
I have no clue who the big ones are this Saturday.
Yeah,
you see,
but I think week 1 isn't great, but I think week 2 is where you're really going to see the
Penn State, West Virginia at 6:30 on NBC. North Carolina,
West Virginia's not good.
At 6:30 on ABC, so that's going to be Herb Street probably, would it be my guess. Georgia, UT Martin, that's a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Washington, Boise State, that's actually not bad. 2:30 kick on ABC. Otherwise, yeah, there's really not a ton.
No, let's see here. Yeah, because I think a lot of the game, the LSU Florida State game is Sunday. Ooh, Sunday, you're going to want to wake up for this one. Northwestern at Rutgers. David Braun makes his debut as the Northwestern head coach. You know what? Go Wildcats. Got to cheer for the, you never go against family. And Monday night.
Full fucking send.
Monday night, it's Clemson Duke. But yeah, that is kind of the week 1 preview. And since we already did curveball, I figured, you know what, it'll be story time from Dylan here. So last weekend got to go. I was asked to be in one of my best friend Cody Heiser's wedding down in the Black Hills. And so got down Thursday, golfed Friday, great time. The beers tasted excellent. Saturday was a beautiful, perfect day. It's so much fun being able to be a part of your friends and lovely wife's wedding. And wake up Sunday and get on the road. And when I left the cabin we were staying at, my gas tank was at about it was like 250 miles, it said, until E, which it's about 200 miles, 3-hour drive home. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden I noticed it about, I don't know, probably right as I got crossed into North Dakota. I'm like, ooh, boy, I probably ain't going to make it home. But no worries. Still got plenty. I was going to stop in New England, which is about 30 miles south of Dickinson. Stop there, fill up. I should be good. Well, get to the turnoff to get on Highway 22. And now I'm like, oh boy, I got plenty. At that point, it was like 85 miles till E. New England's about 30, 60, 55 miles. I'm good. And all of a sudden, I'm at about 50. And I'm like, 5 miles. I got this. Or 10 miles. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll still be good. At 10 miles, I can make. All of a sudden, it just starts going kind of like jumping. I'm like, no, this this cannot be happening. This is not happening. And all of a sudden I look, there was a little bit of a side of the road that had an opening. So I pull over and I'm like, what do I do? Like this can't be happening. This is not real. I'm dreaming this. And I'm like, I seriously went full idiot and ran myself out of gas. So I'm on the side of the road. I'm calling people. I'm like, hey, where are you at? Oh, I'm still in Spearfish. Oh yeah, I went a different route home. Luckily there I saw a guy, Jaden Kuhn is his name. Shout out Jaden. Drove by. I called him. I'm like, hey, where are you at? He's like, I'm in New England. I was like, I got a huge favor for you to ask. I'm out of gas. And it said I had like 50 miles to go and it just cut off. I'm like, is there any way you can go and grab a gas tank, fill it up so I can fill it up and at least get to New England? And he goes, yeah, luckily, yeah, I actually have a tank in my pickup. Shout out. Thank God for farmers. Always prepared. So turns back around. We get it filled up. I make it to New England, fill up there, get home. But always, you know, a good piece of advice, guys, is if you get to about a half a tank, just fill it up. Don't even want to mess with it.
Life lessons Dylan on a Thursday.
Yep, exactly. So hopefully you've never had anything like that, Ethan.
No, I've never actually ran out of gas, believe it or not.
Okay. Yeah.
Surprising. I
yep.
know.
Well, so it's better than running a Pepsi truck out of gas. I've done that too. That's a story for a different day. I've the last few days, and then I was getting roasted by our junior high team because I was teaching how to run a route correctly and quarterback threw like a beautiful ball and I dropped it. And then one of the kids said, you better talk about that on your podcast. So
hey,
if you're listening, well, I guess we'll see if they're listening and see if they bring it up on the next couple of days of practice.
That'd be awesome.
So
that would be great.
But yeah, that wraps up week 1. We will be back next week to recap week 1 and preview week 2. We'll also be doing our NFL preview because that starts up next Thursday as well. So thank you guys for listening. Check us out on all of our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at 3GTB Pod, or not Twitter, X at 3GTB Podcast. You can check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Go like and subscribe there. 3 Guys Talking Ball Podcast. And with that, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.